Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is JSauce and today we will be talking about the patch notes for patch 5.57. Something that was released just today because up until yesterday we had absolutely no information about it. But now that we do, let's get into it. Let's go over the changes on Eden Savage. The two treasure coffers will now always appear, which means the weekly restriction is lifted. You will be able to farm one floor for the gear as many times as you want per week. The weekly entrance restriction has been lifted as well, which means you don't have to start on one to go all the way to 4. You can actually pick and choose which floors that you want to do. By example, you can be farming E12 as much as you can without having to go through the previous ones. And the power of the Echo has been added to the Eden's Promise Savage raids, increasing our maximum HP, damage dealt, and healing potency by 10%. An important thing to note before we move on from this subject is that the Echo will not increase as you wipe. The 10% is a flat rate, that's all you get for the remainder of the lockdown. The third and final 24-man raid from the Near series has now been added to the Dirty Roulette Alliance raids, which means when you actually queue for that roulette, there might be a chance that you end up doing the tower. So on to the Bojzan Southern Front changes. The first one we get is that field note number 12, otherwise known as Dyunbu, which is a 4-star field note, will now start dropping, not 100%, but one of the possible rewards for the skirmishes brought to heal and no camping allowed. The treasure chests that you get as bonus from releasing all the hostages or some of the hostages in Castrum, Lacus, Latori will now yield more fragments, so they buffed up the loot from the bonus chests on CLL. And they also increased the amount of metal that you get at the end of Castrum Latori. So they did buff a little bit of the rewards, plus the field notes and the southern front line. So as far as trading Bojzan clusters for forgotten fragments with the Resistance Quartermaster, they have decreased the ratio from 3 clusters per forgotten fragment to 1 cluster per forgotten fragment, which means that in order for you to buy a forgotten fragment from Clarity, Contention, Finesse, Fortitude, and Divinity, instead of 3 per one of those, you will now have the rating of 1 for 1. I will leave kind of the table on screen so you can see what I mean. So they buffed the number of timeworn artifacts that you get for completing Delubrum Reginae. It now goes from 1, which was a freaking bottleneck, all the way to 3. So puts it on par with the Dal Riade. Remember, you still need to have the quest that requires you to get the timeworn artifacts in order to get the drop at the end of the fight. So make sure that that quest is in your logbook before you go in, or else you get nothing. And the last thing that they did for the Bojzan Southern Front was they fixed an issue with the Fran Aeroid field note. Apparently there was a text issue that might have been fixed. On to tomestones. So the weekly limitation on Allegan Tomestones of Revelation has been increased to double. So instead of having access to 450 of these per week, you now will have access to 900. So your weekly limit, in a nutshell, has been doubled. So introduced with this patch, we now have the Visit Another World server option. This has been added to the subcommand menu on the character selection screen, allowing us, if we choose to, log in another world, which means if the player queue for your server is somewhat large, you can activate this feature and enter the game through a less congested server, although there's a few restrictions that we need to take into account. One, the destination world cannot be selected, so when you actually activate this, it will be chosen automatically for you within your data center. Two, you will be logged in an interite of your starting city. So if you started as an archer, you're gonna go to Redania. If you started as a marauder, you're gonna end up in Limsa, so on and so forth. But this feature will not be available if, for instance, you're in a raid or dungeon and you crashed, and you're trying to get back as quickly as possible to that dungeon or raid instance. This option will not help you. You will have to wait in line, same as everybody else. And that was our video for patch 5.57 patch notes. I hope it was helpful. And until the next one, peace out.